Oklahoma State's got a week 2 game against Arkansas at home. They are roughly a touchdown favorite in this game, from what I understand. We talked about it from the Arkansas angle on Wednesday's show. We got Cody Stovall checking in from all day. Oklahoma State, it's on Lockdown. Cody, what's going on today?
It's another day. Thankfully, it's college football season, so there doesn't have to be any worrisome nature for anybody. It's a great time. It's a great season already, and I'm very happy that Arkansas beat the absolute brakes off of Pine Bluff to make this game a little bit more exciting and enticing from a national perspective.
Okay. I thought the entire offseason that it was going to be a good game. It's going to be a game that I'm going to have my eyes on. We shall see. Again, Oklahoma State's not an enormous favorite, but they're a substantial favorite, decidedly the favorite. According to Vegas, last I saw again was 7.5. You may have another number, but I'm going to go to another number to set this baby up because, of course, Oklahoma State had a decent game. They broke away in the second half against South Dakota. I saw where Ollie Gordon ran for 3.9 yards per carry. Excellent offensive line. One of the best running backs in the nation. 3.9 per carry. FCS team. All that doesn't add up for me.
Yeah, no, from an offensive line perspective, for having 172 starts and then 230, basically with the backups as well, we did not really dominate the line of scrimmage, nor did we get to the second level a whole lot. So the yards that Ollie Gordon did get, he honestly had to earn them because there wasn't a whole lot of movement. There wasn't a whole lot of holes. And I will say, if our offensive line performs the same way against Arkansas, it's going to be potentially a very long day.
So looking at the passing game, of course, you've got a slew of receivers. It might be the best wide receiver core in the Big 12. Alan Bowman did not throw a pick in week 1. He looked good. He looked sharp, from what I understand. I did not watch the game, so I can't state from my own firsthand experience, but your assessment of Alan Bowman.
It was pretty impressive. You know what I mean? The last time we talked, we discussed how we'd seen some things in the spring, right, from a platforming perspective and a pocket presence and awareness perspective. But it's hard to tell, right, because you're not going really full speed and you're not having guys dive at your knees and ankles like in a live game scenario. So we didn't know if it was going to translate to week 1, but it did, right? It was a decent ball club. But it's the signs that you needed to see definitely happened for Alan Bowman in this game.
All right. So the defense coming into this offseason, of course, was retooled. Linebacking core is one of the best in the nation, expected. Secondary a bit torn up last season, and a lot of yardage given up, but also a lot of turnovers forced. So what did you see out of week 1 out of the defensive side?
Unfortunately, it was a lot like last season, right? It was a mixed bag of results for Brian Nardo's defense. From a run game perspective, I think we did okay. From a passing game perspective, it was kind of, chunk plays like Mike Gundy mentioned it in post-game presser. There were 6 major plays that, made a big determination on most of their yardage. But I don't care who you are, you cannot allow a wide receiver to come put up 150 yards in your home stadium. You just can't do it. So it was a lot to be left desired from the defensive perspective.
If you had the chance to look at Arkansas.
I have. Yes, indeed.
So what are we looking at there? Of course, they beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 70-0. So in a sense, that doesn't matter. But in one sense, there's certainly other Power 5 teams that struggle against FCS teams, or at least don't just completely annihilate them and run them over by 70 points. So at least they took them seriously and went out there and executed, I guess, 10 consecutive drives with a touchdown.
Yeah, 10 touchdowns on 10 drives is hard to do on air. You know what I mean? It would be difficult to do that against anybody's scout team in the country, let alone a starting unit in a game. So you cannot dismiss the fact that that is absolutely impressive. Bobby Petrino, he proved yet again why he is one of the most innovative in the game when it comes to offensive minds. So we're going to have our hands full. But, Talon Green, he's very, very good, very athletic. But if you look back to his time at Boise State, he was only a 59% completion guy. So if Oklahoma State forces him to ball in the air, they do have some very, very talented wide receivers. But like you'd mentioned, turnovers are going to be the secret to success here for Oklahoma State. Taylon Green didn't get tested. He didn't get pressured. He was allowed to run all over the field. He did look phenomenal doing so. But I think if we contain and we can kind of mess up his timing in the pocket, he does have a propensity to throw some odd passes and some interceptions along the way.
We got Cody Stovall here breaking down some Oklahoma State for us. Of course, the Cowboys are ranked in the top 25, one of the favorites in the Big 12, coming off a 24-point win against South Dakota. They've got a tougher game we would expect coming up this week at home against Arkansas in a matchup of the SEC and the Big 12. I always like to look out for these conference matchups to kind of size it up. And by the time we get to the end of September, you can put it all together pretty much at that point, besides a few stragglers here and there. Most of the games have been played between the conferences to kind of size it up. Not that many games, and especially in the Big 12. The Big 12 pretty much took all their teams for the most part. I don't know that anyone played a power conference team in week one, but they most all dive into a power conference team this week. So it's going to be mighty interesting for the Big 12. Of course, the last time you tangled with the SEC was in the bowl game last year, and people may want to discount that. Oh, it's a bowl game, it's an exhibition game, who's trying, that sort of thing. But Texas A&M, sure, there were players out, a few on both sides, but not anything egregious. And Texas A&M, shoot, if you watch that bowl game, those players were fighting to the last play, and Oklahoma State won that game against the pretty good Texas A&M team.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
one
I
more go
do.
around here, Cody, for the Big 12 and the SEC.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very exciting. Again, the buildup for this is primarily predicated upon the Arkansas fan base. But again, I think that game was a necessity for not only them, but for Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy does have a propensity at times to kind of lose some of these momentum building games. So from that perspective, I think this is a big game. It's hard to call a week 2 matchup a must win. You know what I mean? But I think for national perception purposes, for Mike Gundy to kind of be viewed as somebody who can take that next step, these are the games that you do have to win, right? You cannot let a mid-tier SEC team come in and beat a top-tier Big 12 team. It's not a good look, and it nationally would be presented as another scenario where the Big 12 is just not quite on the same platform as the SEC. So it's a big one.
Yeah, so if you run down the entire conference, again, most of the big guns are taking on teams outside the conference. Strange situation with Utah and Baylor.
Yeah.
It's a conference game. There are conference teams, but it's not a conference game. It doesn't count in the conference standings. They already had scheduled that series, and they played the one game at Baylor. They're going to turn around and play in Utah, but it does not count, folks. When you see that score, it does not count in the Big 12. But other than that, we got Kansas lining up against Illinois. You've got a Kansas State Tulane game that, even though that's a G5, it's one of the better G5s that's been competitive and actually beat Kansas State a few years ago. You've got Texas Tech taking on Washington State. There's another one that I'm not hitting on. That's was right on my. That's actually probably the best.
Hey, how about we
game,
give
the biggest game.
a massive shout out to Rock Chalk Jayhawk Nation. Illinois hasn't sold out a football game in years. It took KU for Illinois to finally sell out their stadium. That's that Big 12 effect, Mark.
I guess that's what that is. It's got to be. I can't explain that one. Oh, we got Colorado and Nebraska. That was the other one I was thinking of. That's a big one against Big Ten. Another one against Big Ten. Iowa State, of course. So when I look at some of these matchups, and I'm going to go back to Oklahoma State and Arkansas here, when you say, well, it's a big game, but maybe it's not such a big game, it depends on how you look at it. The way I look at it is, if you think that the Big 12 is a one entry into the college football playoff, then it's technically not a big game, other than preparing your team for league play against a quality opponent, a team that has some talent, regardless of what you think of Arkansas, and they might be the second or third worst team in the SEC. That remains to be seen, but they've got talent. They've got, muscle across the line. They're a worthy opponent. But in regards to, okay, this is either a really big game if you believe that the top teams in the Big 12 have an entry into the CFP other than winning the championship, then of course the record's got to be sterling. Or you think, well, the Big 12 gets one, so these games don't matter except for perception. They don't want to look bad. But it all starts in a couple weeks when they go into Big 12 play.
I mean, yeah, I guess I could see that to some degree, but I think perception does matter even more so for Oklahoma State in the new iteration of the Big 12. Somebody has got to be the flag bearer of the conference. You didn't have to be a specific team, but you have to have, a couple teams that are willing to pick up that flag and represent. Most people naturally think that it could be Utah. I guess from this season's standpoint, a lot of people do think it's going to be Utah. But for Oklahoma State to take that next level, the perception does matter. And the other cat here is from a recruiting angle. Mark, we've been battling Arkansas for years on recruits, right? Like currently they have 5 Okies. They have 5 guys from the Topeka, Wichita area. They have 4 guys from Frisco, Texas. They have 5 guys from DFW Metroplex. These are recruiting battles that we're always going to be in. Matter of fact, 5 of our top 7 recruits had Arkansas in their final 5. So again, the perception is that they're in the SEC. They have a lot of benefits that we do not have. And that very well may be the case, which is why the only thing we can do is speak for it on the field. From a recruiting perspective, from a perception perspective, from nationally, I think this game is much, much bigger than just a normal game anymore.
ESPN thinks so. They put it on the noon Eastern time window, which after their primetime game and arguably the 3:30, maybe the 3:30, that goes back and forth, but it's one of the bigger days, one of the bigger windows for ESPN throughout the day. They usually throw the SEC on at noon Eastern time. So yeah, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, I don't remember these teams ever playing, and I've got a pretty good mind for all of that. I do not remember. Have you looked into the history books to see when the last time these two teams played?
Yeah, 1980. 1980,
Okay.
they won 33-20 in 1980.
Okay. I was going to say, if it's within my viewing of college football from the time I was a little tyke, I usually remember all those. Now, that was within the window, but just barely. Don't remember that one, though. Okay, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, they were both, well, Arkansas was really good in 1980, around that range. Oklahoma State, not so much at that point until about 5 or 6 years later. Pat Jones kicked it into gear at that point. Should be an interesting one. OK State, check out one of the best running backs in all of college football, of course, Ollie Gordon. Check out Alan Bowman. See how he fares against this Arkansas defense, and we get to see the Big 12 and the SEC get together. Cody, what's going on there at All Day OK State?
Man, we're just trying to fill the coffers with content as much as physically possible. Obviously, I do the daily show, and I do mess around occasionally on Twitter. Matter of fact, I was in one of those Twitter spaces for a few hours last night, and I'm not super difficult to find, and I love film. I'm a film junkie. So I can, I can chop it up whenever you want, whenever you need, because I love this conference as much as I love Oklahoma State. And, it's going to be a good year. It needs to be a statement season for the Big 12. I don't care who makes a run in the CFP, us, Utah, K-State. It could be UCF. I really don't care. But again, we're talking about perception and why the perception for Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State means this Arkansas game's pretty big. The perception of the Big 12 needs to continue to climb, and I think this is the year to do it because OU and Texas are gone. So the question is, how is the Big 12 going to respond? How is the TV viewership going to, add up to this all making financial sense? So we need to capitalize this season. I think teams like Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas State have to get it done because obviously West Virginia ain't going to help.